Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is our Big Ten preview. And if you're going to notice, in the middle of the screen is Brian LeBel, and just to his right is Vincent Turner. I have to admit, normally we have Dave Hoffman here. Dave is on assignment, literally. He has a real job and doesn't do podcasts when he's not available. Let's just put it that way. Dave's in a highly skilled business that I'm just going to say he's not available to make it here today. So subbing in Brian and Vincent, welcome to both of you. Brian, let's start with you. Big Ten preview. This is week number 5. The good news is that there's 4 schools that don't have to play this week. They get a week off. But the bad news is the teams that are playing, there's some pretty big matchups. At least there are some that are going to be pretty important.
Yeah. Starting right off at 12 o'clock, right? USC going from playing the latest game in the country to playing the earliest game in the country, which much to Lincoln Riley's dismay. But this is an interesting game because Illinois looked like a top 10 team last week before, obviously, Indiana and them took the field. But they're in a position where they kind of got to bounce back. This was they had high aspirations. They were looking really good in the Big Ten. A lot of people picked them to sneak into the playoff, be one of those teams that could be right on the heels of the Ohio States and the Penn States and the Oregons. But a game last week where they gave up a ton of rushing yards. Indiana did whatever they want. I think they had 5 passing touchdowns as well. This was a defense that was supposed to be really good for Illinois, and now they're coming into a game against an SC team that's riding high. The offense is very, very good for the first time under Lincoln Riley. Looked very, very balanced, and they're coming off of a game where they almost had 300 rushing yards themselves. So this is going to be a game. I think, it's good for them. They're at home and it's early, but this is not going to be an easy game for them by any stretch.
Yeah, the rebound, Vincent, from last week, as Brian mentioned, the press, and it seemed like everybody was saying, no, this is Illinois' year. And they go into Indiana. Bloomington obviously didn't treat him very well. That's a rough loss. Now, they're still in the top 25, but this is are they wounded? Are they beat up a little bit? Is their pride been hurt? Or is this a team, we had one skip, one bump in the road, and we're going to take on the Trojans and really redeem ourselves this week? What do you expect?
Game of the year in Champaign. Last week, you're looking at the Illinois team that was highly ranked. A lot of people was picking Illinois over Indiana, and they got steamboat. They're playing a very talented USC team. The ghost of Anthony Davis coming back. And when you look at USC, this is the most balanced team Lincoln Riley had this year, gentlemen, both offensively and defensively. What impressed me most about USC is Brian talked about their offense, their defense, 16 sacks on the year. And they got a hell of an NFL prospect at linebacker by the name of Eric Gentry. Richard Batman 2. Back to you, Hawk. Richard Batman 2.
Batman 2. He's not Batman 1. Illinois, Brian. Luke Altmaier is one of my guys. I liked him last year. He was kind of sneaky good. 855 yards right now. He's averaging a little bit more than 8.6 yards every time he drops back to pass. 9 touchdowns, no interceptions. But is it the rushing game? They've only got 496 yards on the year.
Well, last week the game was almost out of reach by halftime. Indiana just came out. They just steamrolled them. They couldn't stop anybody. It's one of those things where you have to stop somebody, right? It's football's, offense, defense, special teams. And half of it is going to be your defense, right? The other half is offense. Maybe you throw a little bit of special teams in there, but they did. When you don't stop anyone, and to the extent of last week, because listen, Indiana's put up video game numbers on offense, right? They had 5 passing touchdowns. They ran for 312 yards. That's unheard of. The fact of the matter is Illinois had a chance to scrape and get back, but the second half, Indiana said, "Hey, we're going to put our 5 offensive linemen up front. We're just going to run the ball. We're going to chew clock, and we're going to take this one handily." And that's exactly what they did. And USC had 289 yards on the ground against Michigan State. So quick turnaround, maybe, watch some film, break to say, hey, we got to be able to stop some guys up front. Otherwise, it's going to be another long day for us.
Well, one of the factors, if you want to look at it that way, in Big Ten football is they don't run against each other. The conference doesn't allow for it. And the numbers that you're giving, 250, 300 yards a game, that's a very unusual number. You would expect that from a West Coast team going out playing, let's say, for example, Oregon, when they play Penn State. Now, I don't want to go into that game yet, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But, Oregon's offense, maybe Washington's offense, you would expect that in the air, but certainly not on the ground. So obviously there's some things that are different. And big linemen hunkering down, blowing some holes, controlling the clock, like what you said, what Indiana did. Obviously, that was a a long day there for the Illinois defense. Vincent, your final thoughts here on this one before we move on to the next game.
As I said before, game of the year for Illinois. This is a game that Illinois got to prove that what happened last week was a bad day. If they go into this game and lose to SC, they're going to be out of the top 25, and then it might be a long year in the Big Ten. And I mean long, lane, wide open, long in Champaign.
Yeah. I don't have their schedule in front of me, but I think you're right. This so absolutely. I won't call it a must-win game, but all factors point to that. That'll be at 12 o'clock. It's on Fox. USC is ranked number 21 in the country. Illinois is ranked number 23 presently. Another game that will be on the Big Ten Network that we want to talk about a little bit is going to be Rutgers going to Minnesota. Under normal circumstances, not that big of a deal, right? No one really is going to spend a whole heck of a lot of time on the national level going over this game. But Rutgers is 3-1 right now, and 2-1 Minnesota. This is a pretty big game for both those teams. Brian, why don't you start off with this one?
Well, I think Minnesota, right now, they're touting the best run defense in college football, right? I think they're giving right around 52 yards a game, which is kind of the opposite of what we just talked about Illinois, right? I'm sure Illinois would love to have that problem right now, but I think they're going to rely heavily on Ethan Kaliakmanis. I think he's going to have to play well. They're going to kind of do a running back committee as well for Rutgers because they just lost Raymond for the season. So he was their leading rusher. I'm not sure exactly what the game plan is going to be coming in here because obviously, listen, Big Ten football, you want to establish the run. You want to control the line of scrimmage. You want to be able to set up play action and take a lot of pressure off your quarterback. But, I think if you're Minnesota, you got to be licking your chops a little bit here, right? Because we know we can stop the run very, very well. And if they got a couple of young guys or maybe unexperienced guys coming in to try to go by committee, we like our chances. And we like what we're doing up front. I think Minnesota's favored slightly in this game. I still think it's going to be a very good game. I give Minnesota the edge in that regard, but it's just one of those things where, could go either way. But I think Minnesota, the way they're set up on defense and offense right now, they're healthier. They're a little bit stronger. I like them in this one.
There's a one-game difference, and that can be huge. But Kaliakmanis has almost double the amount of yardage thrown as does Lindsey there. 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions for Lindsey. Kaliakmanis has 7 touchdowns and only 1 pick right there. I'm a little surprised with that many yards. He's probably throwing in between the 20s a whole heck of a lot, and then they start to run it once they get in the red zone. But you mentioned Antoine Raymond with 7 touchdowns individually right there on 61 carries. He's got 310 yards. Pretty impressed with him. They've had some close games there at Rutgers, but nonetheless, offensively, they're pretty stout. But you mentioned the Minnesota defense, at least in terms of stopping the run. That 52 yards, that's impressive anywhere you look.
Yeah. And another thing, too, I think Rutgers, one thing they have to – Ian Strong, I think he's got just shy of 370 yards on the season. They're going to rely on him heavily. They're going to have to. He's been fantastic. The passing game has been really good, so that's the upside for Rutgers, right? As you're saying, hey, we're going against a very stout run defense, but I don't think you ever want to become one-dimensional, right? Even if your passing attack is by and far better, I think you still want to have balance. I think it makes both sides better when you can throw the ball down the field, you can't stack the box, and when you can run the ball successfully and you have to bring, the safeties up maybe every once in a while, you can kind of take shots down the field, but everyone says next man up, right? And this is a decent rushing attack Rutgers has, right? They're not bad, so it's just going to be interesting to see kind of the shuffling of the cards and, how they come out and what they're able to do offensively because they've been very solid on offense. But, it's going to be interesting to see if that continues.
Brian gives an early nod to Minnesota. Let me go over Rutgers' schedule with you, Vincent. They beat Ohio 34-31. That was a close game. And Ohio, remember, they played Ohio State just a couple weeks ago. Miami of Ohio, 45-17 was the final there. Norfolk State, that was a 60-10 blowout. And then they get in a conference play and they lose 38-28 to Iowa. So this is their second Big Ten game. But give us your perspective and your thoughts, Vincent.
I look at Rutgers. Last week they lost a real tough game to Iowa, but I like some offensive pieces that y'all just mentioned. I like the receiver DT Sheffield. I think he's a big-time player. On the defensive side, I like Ed O'Neill. That's a pretty good lineman. But I'm going to piggyback off what Brian said about Minnesota's run defense. Remember this name, Anthony Smith. Very special football player. Got 3 sacks on the year. John Nestor, an outstanding linebacker that a lot of people don't talk about in the Big Ten. he leads the team in tackles. But most of all, when I look at this game, I think, to me personally, the key to the game with P.J. Flick is their quarterback. I like Drake Langton. I think he's a pretty good football player. And to be honest, I think he's going to have a better game. I think Minnesota's going to come away with the win. Back to you, Harp.
Well, we'll find out. This game, once again, that's at 12 o'clock noon on the Big Ten Network. Next game we were going to look at is there's a bunch of 3:30 games that have national significance. The first of which is going to Husky Stadium there in Washington, where Ohio State brings their 3-0, number one in the country. Vincent, we'll start with you this time. 3-0 against 3-0. Both teams are undefeated. They both have 3 wins. I can't remember if Ohio State's ever been to Seattle to play a game. If it has been in the recent past, forgive me for not knowing that, but this is uncharted territory for them, right? They're going to have to get rid of the sailboats and the tugboats and everything else that's going to be just east of the stadium there. They've got the defense to do a lot of things, but 78,000, maybe 80,000 Husky fans are going to be going wild. This will be one of the big games of the year, if not in the last couple of years that Washington gets to host. I know Dave Hoffman probably chomping at the bit to be able to talk about this game, but Vincent, give us your perspective here between these two teams.
The Ohio State traveling to the Northwest. Big football game. What I want to see is how Ohio State going to play away from the big house. Julian saying, we've been talking about how special he's been. He's played solid football. Jeremiah Smith, we know how good he is. Caleb Downs, we know how good he is. NFL talent all over the field for the Ohio State.
Yep.
But the Huskies, this is their game to prove that they need to be in the top 25. And now they're a big-time player in the college football playoff picture. They got a very special receiver in Denzel Boston. A lot of people saying he might be the best receiver in the country. Then you mentioned him yesterday, Hop. Joanna Coleman? The running back is a special player. But I look at this game more that Ohio State is going into enemy territory. The Huskies are going to be loud. It's loud up there in Husky Stadium. The Husky dogs going to be out. And, man, Ohio State is coming into that dome. And we know about the Huskies. They always talk about the 91 team. Sorry you're not here, Mr. Hoffman, but this is a huge game up in the Northwest. Back to you, Hoffman.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, are the Huskies feeling robbed that they're not in the top 25 yet, or do they still need to prove some things before the writers, the coaches, and everybody else seems to think that their spot in the bandwagon fits?
Well, I think Ohio State rightfully so is the number one team in the country. And I think if nothing else for Washington, this is a litmus test, and if you don't win the game, this is just to kind of see, hey, the names you mentioned on offense, right? They got some guys at running back. They got some guys at receiver that are very, very good. But even if you don't win this game, right, if you can play Ohio State close, if you can kind of push the envelope and say, hey, we're a tough out in the Big Ten too, right? We're a team that, needs to be reckoned with. We're 3-0. We've done everything we need to do up until this point, and we just went toe to toe with the number one team in the country. I think that, I think that bodes well for them. Maybe not necessarily initially, but maybe down the road, playoff chances, right? Especially if they get another couple wins. But for what you mentioned earlier, the last time Ohio State played in Husky Stadium was 2007, and the final score was Ohio State 33, Washington 14. And I think the Huskies are going to try to avoid that final score. I think there were 3 other instances where they played there, all 3 Washington wins. I think they'd much rather have those 3 results than the one back in 2007. But it has been a while. It's a long flight. It's going to be a raucous crowd, like Vincent said. It's going to be. I mean, look, I don't want to say this is their Super Bowl, but this is a big game for them, right? This is one of the games on the schedule where it's circled. I'm sure even last week they're like, hey, we got our game on Saturday, but maybe we sneak a little bit of Ohio State film in there and maybe try to get ready for those guys.
Vincent, you got anything else to say? I see you smiling over there.
Hey, I'm looking forward to this football game because you got to understand what Brian just said. I just want to see if Washington's going to be able to play up to the level and stay in the football game. It's almost like Iowa and Illinois last week. Now we got a different feeling about Illinois because they got smoked by Indiana 63-10. It's the same type of football game. We know what Ohio State is bringing to the table. NFL talent all over the field. You look at every position, these guys have got players that's going to be drafted high, and they might have the best receiver that a lot of people saying has ever came in college football. His name is Mr. Smith. But I'm looking at the Huskies for one thing. Do you belong here? Jed Fish, this is your signature game for you being pulled from Arizona to be the head coach at Washington. And remember this. I said Denzel Boston. is going to be a big player in that game, but it's going to be the quarterback, Desmond Williams, who a lot of people are saying is deservedly one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Back to you, Hart.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what type of I'm going to call it trash talking that takes place in between the players. You know, if the Ohio State defense says in your own building, right, you can't throw that ball here, it's not going to happen. And if they take control, it could be a long day for the Huskies. Again, the Ohio State, as Brian said, deservedly so. They're the number one team in the country right now. If they play like it, right, if they play mean and vicious and they take control, could be a long day. If the Huskies aren't ready. But I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great game, and I'm looking forward to it. I promise you that. So that'll be a 3:00 kick. That's going to be a CBS start, 3:30 there again. Number one team in the country against the 3-0 and undefeated Washington Huskies. Another 3:30 game that's going to take place, and this is going to be on the Peacock Network. Number 11. They've ranked. They moved Indiana up. They've ranked them at number 11 right now. They're going against Iowa, and I'll be candid with you. I was surprised that they were able to do it again. Last year, everything was a surprise. Kurt Cignetti going into Indiana and Fernando Mendoza and getting a couple completions here and winning a game and winning another game. And, at the end, they're in the playoff. They're going against Notre Dame. I wasn't sure if they were going to have the same type of talent to be able to get there this year, but they're undefeated. They're 4-0 right now, 1-0 in the conference, and they're going against the 3-1 Iowa Hawkeye team. Let's start with you, Vincent. This is a big game for Indiana. You get another road win in the Big Ten that just builds momentum, and you've got one more win, one more reason to get ready for next week, get a bye weekend for you. But I'm kind of excited now for the Hoosiers.
I love Kurt Cignetti. Last year, everybody was saying it was a fluke that he got in the college football playoffs, saying that he didn't deserve. But I noticed something. I kept to myself, and when he got this gentleman from Cal, the quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, he recognized now, Heisman, 975 yards on the year, 14 touchdowns, biggest statistic, no turnovers. Yeah. And I think if we really football fans, look what he did against Illinois last Saturday night. Deserved to be getting all the recognition. When Cignetti got him out of Cal in the portal, I had a thinking that Indiana was going to be a pretty good football team. And offensively, they rock it. Omar Cooper is one of the best receivers in the country, and they're able to run the football. And what was so surprising last week against Illinois, gentlemen, both of you LeBel brothers, they dominated. It wasn't even no question from start to finish, complete football domination. I'm looking them to take care of business, get the hour on the road. This is a football team I think is going to be very dangerous in the Big Ten, and I think they're going to be a college football playoff team. And they got a very special player, Fernando Mendoza, to transfer from Cal. Back to you, Hawk.
Well, Kinnick Stadium has been a special place there for Hawkeye fans for years. And at the beginning of the game, when you wave to the kids in the hospital, you look at some of the tradition there, and Kinnick himself and what an amazing player he was back in the day. But Brian, I have to admit, I'm not really impressed with anything on offense. Their quarterback only has 490 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Their leading rusher is less than 200. Leading receiver, a little over 100 yards. There's not a whole lot that I'm impressed with Iowa. I'm not saying they can't win this game, but they got to turn it on.
They did manage to score 38 points last week, right? They had a decent game. It was a conference game, but this is an Indiana team coming in that their worst offensive output on the season is 27 points week 1 against Old Dominion. Since then, they've scored 56, 73, and 63. And, this team has done nothing but score. I don't know what it is. They're like the antithesis of what Iowa is, right? Iowa's a run the ball, field position, grind it out kind of game. And Indiana's like, we're going to run a track meet. We're going to score as many points as we can. You mentioned Kalen Black. He's averaging 7 yards a carry. It's insane how good. If you look at the numbers, I mean, obviously with how many points they're scoring, obviously you have to have the numbers. But Omar Cooper is averaging just under 20 yards a catch. Every time he gets the ball, he's getting almost a fifth of the field. It's ridiculous. But this is a game for Indiana where you got Oregon on the schedule next week, right? And you're the number 11 team. They're number 6, and you don't want to get ahead of yourself. But I think they're favored in this game. I think they know they're favored in this game. They're rolling. I don't want to say it's a trap game, but I think that mentality is kind of there where, hey, we might be overlooking Iowa a little bit, which you can't do, right? It's a conference game. It's a good team, and they can come out there and they can put you on your butt. They can run the ball. They could do exactly, what the Big Ten style of football. Listen, we know we're not exactly as explosive these guys, but we can try to run the ball. We can try to limit mistakes, and hopefully we can scrape out a win. But I'm really high on this Indiana team. I'm kind of putting them where a lot of the media had in Illinois at the beginning of the year. I think this is if you look at the rest of their schedule, they take care of business. They can maybe split those top 20 games. This very easily should and could be a playoff team.
Well, Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City should be 84 degrees at kickoff. At least that's what expected. It should be sunny. It's still September. The clouds don't roll in for another couple weeks, and then they don't leave for the rest of the conference play. It's just one of those things when you play outdoors. It's a great spot, but I do think Indiana has a chance to move into the top 10 if they have an impressive win. The 60 and 70 point scoring it speaks for itself. Now, will they score that much against the Hawkeyes? I don't know. But if they get in the 40s, I don't think Iowa can match them. They just don't have the offense to be able to score that quickly. Next game I want to look at, guys, we're going to talk about UCLA, and they've had a lot of woes right now. They're struggling. They may not win another game. Ryan and I were talking about this a little bit before we went on the air. And Vincent, I'll start with you. Northwestern. If I'm a Northwestern coach, assistant coach, the guy that takes the trash out, the secretary, I'm saying, boys, you better take the Bruins down and mark this as a point on the calendar. This has got to be a big win for you. At least I hope that it is in terms of the way that they're talking right now. UCLA's in some trouble.
Well, I'm going to say this. First, I'm going to start with Northwestern. They haven't played pretty good football this year. The quarterback that they got out of the transfer portal from SMU, Preston Stone, had some pretty good years over at SMU, and he just haven't been able to do it this year. 3 touchdowns, 6 INTs. So Northwestern is struggling too now. But when I look at UCLA, they're supposed to be a better program. The City of Angels, LA, history. Gary Beeman is turning over in his grave. Terry Donahue. This is a Bruin team that's supposed to be better than what they are. And it's just amazing to me is how far the bottom has fell out. And then you would have thought them getting Nico I from Tennessee, you wouldn't think they would have started the season off. And then having Deshaun Foster as a head coach who was a good player at UCLA. I think this game for the Bruins is that I'm going to go on the limb a little bit. I think UCLA is going to play Northwestern to the vest. You don't have nothing to lose. Everybody's looking at you. They're looking down on you. But this is a school that's had some great history, man. Some great players. And unfortunately, there's a time the rails will probably came off. But it's a game. I wouldn't put Northwestern out there too quick because you're going to have a Bruins team that's going to come with some energy early, I believe. Back to you, Hawk.
Yeah, Brian, your thoughts here on this one. UCLA, obviously, Nick, he's gone. He left. Their coach left, but they've lost by 33 points to Utah. They only lose by 7 to UNLV and 25 to New Mexico. But then they've got Penn State, Michigan State, Maryland, Indiana, Nebraska. They play Ohio State in Columbus, Washington, and the USC. There's not a whole lot of room on my schedule for them to say, oh yeah, we should probably win this game, especially as well as they've not as well as poorly as they've shown offensively. They just can't, they're not doing anything.
Yeah, they got raw into the deal as far as the scheduling because UCLA's schedule down the stretch is brutal. But the games they're supposed to win were the last 2 weeks, right? The tune-up games, the get-right games, and they didn't look like it, right? But listen, they're going to have a lot of guys coming in and out, right? You're going to have guys hitting the portal. You're going to have a lot of guys that maybe wouldn't get an opportunity to play in any other instance. They're going to be playing for some pride route, right? This is going to be their Super Bowl. This is going to be their, hey, let me show what I can do. You know what I mean? Backs against the wall. We got nothing to lose, right? So maybe they come out and they, show something. Now, I will say this, Northwestern last week was hanging around with Oregon for a little bit. The offense was not good. Vincent alluded to earlier that the turnovers at the quarterback position haven't been good. They haven't moved the ball particularly well. I think they got 2 garbage time TDs against Oregon to kind of make it somewhat respectable, but it was still a 3-score loss. And then, the defense played solid though, right? You're playing a very good Oregon team, a very good offense, a Dan Lanning coach team, which he's been tremendous up there, but they held their own for the first 2.5 quarters. It wasn't necessarily close, but at some point you got to say, hey, we got to score some points. And this is the perfect week to do it if you're Northwestern, right? You're playing against a bad team. I mean, New Mexico State and UNLV just kind of had their way with this defense. I think the one plus for UCLA is we don't know who's starting where, right? They're going to be throwing guys in and out and just maybe seeing what they got and giving guys an opportunity to get some, get some reps on tape. But I mean, this is a very weird thing to be discussing going into week 4. That's just not, if you're a UCLA fan, you don't want to, I don't think this is a conversation you wanted to have. Maybe week 8 or 9, but week 4 is, it's rough. But hey, anything can happen in this game. It could go either way.
Nico Iamaleava has left. He's no longer there. His brother, Madden, is a freshman there.
Yeah.
It's interesting that he didn't leave. It wasn't a package deal. And I would imagine the older brother goes, look, if I want to play. And the younger brother goes, I want to play too. But they've got 5 other quarterbacks on the roster. 3 are freshmen and 2 are sophomores. They don't have any depth at that. I mean, they've got bodies, but they don't have any. They don't have any guys that are upperclassmen at all. I mean, the next, Pierce Clarkson's a sophomore, Luke Duncan is a sophomore, and Nico was a sophomore. Everybody else is a freshman. They've got 6 other guys on the roster that are playing that quarterback position, and 4 of them are freshmen. How are you going to get any kind of leadership? That to me is a general manager or player personnel director from the NFL side going. Woo! We got a red flag here, guys. We don't have anybody in case, even if he gets hurt, we have nobody to replace him.
Now, I will say this. There was a situation a couple years ago where the USC Trojans kind of similar boat, right? We're getting near the end of the season. We didn't know who was going to play quarterback. They're shuffling guys in and out, and they gave this kid by the name of Jackson Dart a chance to play some quarterback.
Yeah.
And listen, you never know what you got until you see it on the field, right? You whatever you have on paper, but the game isn't played on paper. You play it on grass or turf or wherever you're at. So you never know. And then obviously I think things worked out pretty well for Jackson Dart. Unfortunately, Caleb Williams came in and he ended up going to Ole Miss, though, and I think he's completely fine where he is now. But it could happen. You never know who you got at quarterback. Listen, they recruit these kids for a reason, and I'm sure all of them have gaudy high school numbers to be able to say, hey, I'm a UCLA, Bruin. I'm on the roster and you're there for a reason. Now, Northwestern, obviously every team is the same way, but again, you never know what you got. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise and you kind of figure it out now and see, hey, maybe, you find some diamonds in the rough and say you got a chance to play here at UCLA for a while, especially because, not a lot of upperclassmen, but all these guys are young. So if they do have talent and they are good, I'll be there for a couple of years.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting find there. But the Bruins and Northwestern both, between the two of them, only have 1 win, and UCLA doesn't have any. So let's look a little bit more at really this is going to be the feature game of the evening, 7:00 there. And by the way, the BTN network at 3:30 has the Northwestern game. This one will be on NBC, 7:30. Number 6 Oregon, they're 4-0 right now against 3-0 Penn State Nittany Lions. This is must-see TV, Vincent. I'm not saying that because we're just doing a show right now. I'm saying this because I want to peek. I want to see if Oregon's offense can go against Penn State's defense and try to find a way to get, 21 first-half points, something close to that. If it's 7-zip or 7-3 at the half, I'm thinking Penn State can win this game because you're stifling one of the best offenses put together. But Oregon's defense has improved dramatically. So this is another reason why I want to see what the Ducks are doing. Go ahead, Vincent.
I'm crazy about Oregon for a reason. I love the head coach, Dan Lanning. I don't care if anybody get upset today as we on there, but he got his first job as a grad assistant at the University of Memphis, the 901 where I'm from. But I'm going to start with Oregon.
You did it again. No, you did it again. We can't have any show without a mention of Memphis, Tennessee in one way, shape, or form. The 901. All right, Vincent, thank you for getting the plug in. There you go.
When I think about Oregon, I think speed, fast track. I think the greatest show on turf. They got a guy right now. Think about Oregon. The last 2 years they've had, what's my man, Bo Nix. That's with the Broncos. Then they bring in Dylan Gabriel. Now they might have the best transfer portal quarterback they had in Dante Moore, Martin Luther King, Detroit, Michigan, by way of who we've been talking about, UCLA. And, man, he's been everything that we thought he could be at the position. Very talented. They got a receiver that's a transfer from Alabama, Malik Benson. One thing we know about Oregon, they're going to push the needle. They're going to score points. Now, when you look at Penn State, James Franklin, you know I got a nickname for you, Chico the Boss, because you're supposed to be the most handsome coach in all of college football. But you know what? You ain't won a big regular season game yet. You got to the playoffs when you dropped the egg in the semifinals. But this supposed to be your best team ever because you returned just about everybody. Your quarterback, Drew Allen, your two running backs, Katron Allen and Nicholson Singleton, who both high NFL talents, and one of the best defensive players in the country, Dane Dennis Sutton. So when I look at this game, as you just mentioned, Hart, is Penn State going to have to, is they going to be able to match that offensive prowess? Because Oregon going to score points. Believe that. I think everybody knows that tonight here on the show. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, can Penn State, nationally ranked game, everybody want to know this. This is a Penn State that can win it all, going against an Oregon team that's been very consistent under Dan Lanning. A team like Oregon that went undefeated in the Big Ten last year and ended up becoming the number 1 seed in the college football playoffs. And you know that Dan Lanning likes situations like this, and Oregon likes to play big-time football in games like this. So to me, all the pressure's on Penn State because Oregon can push their needle and scoring points. Back to you, Hart.
You know, it's interesting, Brian, when you look at completion percentages and all that, there was a time where if you threw over 50%, you were something special. I remember talking to Steve Barkowski. He threw for 3,000 yards one year for the Falcons. And he goes, I led the league, and there are very few players that had ever thrown for over 3,000 yards at that time. If I threw for 3,000 today, I'd get fired. I'd get thrown off the field because that's not enough. You need 4. You need 5,000. The reason I bring this up, Dante Moore, his completion percentage is 80 in his first 4 games. I've said 2 out of 3, 66%. That's amazing. There are some guys, there's quite a few that are in the mid-70s. If you complete 3 out of 4 passes, you're something special. He's completing 4 out of 5. Are you kidding me? And with as fast as the Ducks are flying around and all that kind of stuff, the game has really slowed down for him. And I think the sky's the limit for him offensively. Your thoughts here? Give me an impression. Bring me back down to earth here for Oregon football fans.
Well, the old school talking head for football would say, hey, if I throw a pass down the field, 1 of 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad, right? 1's a completion, 2's an interception, 3's an incompletion. But the way Oregon's moving the ball, what they've done. Even
Hold on. Every time I hear that, I have to respond. You have 3 things that can happen when you run, and 2 of them are bad. You can fumble, or you can get tackled at the line of scrimmage or behind it. So I understand what you're saying, please. But I also have an argument for that anything bad can happen on any place. So that's 1940, 50, 60 coaches that are saying that kind of stuff. And a lot of them are out of the league for not because they're old, it's because they didn't move with the game. All right, I'm sorry. I had to mention that. Go ahead.
No, but this Oregon team is even in the days of Chip Kelly, right? The mantra is let's get the ball to our playmakers, let's get them in space, let's get the ball downfield. And I think what Dan Lanning did is he came in, he said, hey, we're going to keep doing all that. We're just going to finally stop some guys on defense, which if you look at it, I mean, we talked about it a little earlier. Northwestern couldn't do anything on offense for 3.5 quarters. And then they got 2 late touchdowns to kind of, hey, listen, we don't have to beat you 34-0. We don't care if we beat you 34-14. A win's a win, especially in conference play. But I'll say this, though, that Penn State is one of the toughest places to go play. And I saw the clip earlier because, hey, there's a lot of activity. A lot of people are excited for this game. I think I don't know if it was McCarthy's last year they played there or the year before, but there's a clip that they show where Penn State kicks off and they say, hey, it's a touchback. And the PA announcer gets on and says, everybody in white, let's get loud. And then it gets to the point where they're coming on the field for their first play. And he's looking over the sidelines. He's like, I can't hear anything. They got to call a timeout before they even get their first snap off. Before the clock even starts running, they're already down in timeout. And listen, because that Penn State is one of the best home field advantages in all the sport. It's insane how rowdy and how great that crowd is year in and year out. Ohio State comes in and kicks their butt. Michigan does. They're still there. They're still ready to go. But this is supposed to be one of the years, like Vincent said, for James Franklin. It's our turn to finally win some of these games, right? It's our turn to finally turn it up a notch and say, hey, we're the team in the Big Ten that you guys are going to have to fear and have to respect. And this is one of those games where it could go either way. I think both defenses are great. I would be surprised if either team doesn't eclipse 20 points, I would be shocked. But this is one of those games where I feel like if you're Drew Aller, especially because they've 3 tune-up games where he hasn't been on the field a lot, the numbers aren't great. He's trying to get drafted as well, right? And this quarterback class is kind of up in the air. This is a big game for him.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more pressure on Penn State because you're at home and because hey, we still got it. We got those guys from Ohio circling on the schedule down the stretch too that we still have to deal with. But this is going to be a fun game to watch from just a fan perspective. I'm smiling because I think this is going to be a great game to watch. I think it's going to be great television, and I think it could go either way.
Well, for Penn State to be ranked number 3 after beating Nevada, Florida International, and Villanova, I think that was a little high. I'm just saying they've fallen into it because of their talent level. Then they play Oregon this week, right? They win this game. They got UCLA, Northwestern, and Iowa. We talked about all those teams just a few moments ago before they get into, I'm going to say it's going to be late October, early November. They've got Ohio State, Indiana, Michigan State, Nebraska, and then Rutgers. They've only got 3 ranked teams that they have to play throughout the course of the season. That's the lightest, easiest schedule I've ever seen in the last 2 years. For a nationally ranked team to have to go through something like that where they don't have to play hardly anyway, they should be jacked to get this game started and forget about having the announcer yell to get the fans going. I think that they all recognize this is going to be an absolutely monster game for them. Vincent, one more thought before we go.
Quack, quack, baby. Offense. I'm telling you, Penn State, you better be able to match Oregon because they're going to come put the pressure on you offensively. They're going to score points, gentlemen. Back to you, Hawk.
Yeah, pretty simple. Final thoughts for you, Brian, before we head out for the week. This one's a big game. I think SC has a big game, of course. So Ohio State going to Washington. There's reasons to watch, even though that Michigan State, Purdue, and Wisconsin all have the week off right now. There's plenty of Big Ten action to keep everybody's eyes and ears open for what's going to happen.
Well, if you're Oregon, if you win this game, or even if you lose this game, you got to turn right around. You got to play Indiana next week, depending on how they look. It's not going to be that's not an easy task. That's 2 very difficult games back to back. So I think maybe a little more pressure on Oregon. When you think about that, but it's a good week of football, despite a bunch of conference teams getting byes. A lot of ranked teams, a lot of teams that can kind of separate themselves from the pack and kind of put themselves in the playoff conversation.
Well, a lot of great games, folks. Starting at noon, there'll be 6 of them, and it ends at 7:30. That game that we're looking at right now between Oregon and Penn State, that's 7:30 again. That'll be on the NBC networks, and lots of good football to be had for any Big Ten fan. We want to say thanks for Dave Hoffman, even though he wasn't able to be here this week, for allowing Brian LeBel and Vincent Turner to substitute in for him. We hope that you have a fantastic week, and that your favorite team has a chance to play and win and do some great things there in the Big Ten. But in the meanwhile, we just want to say thank you for watching. I'm Harper LeBel, 100 Yards of Football. This has been our Big Ten preview.